Do you have a presentation you want to give? How do you want to
Yeah, I mean, I did one today, but the short version. The only thing I would add that I didn't specifically, explicitly say, but it was inferred, is I know you're going to evaluate this budget. I think it's important to see, because each budget builds somewhat on the progress that's been done, and you see all 6, or this is my 7th, in a cumulative. And the reason is, you could not get to eliminating scoop and toss, as an example, an illustration of a point, if it wasn't for all the other hard work that took you to the being on the goalpost of that decision. It's not just a year ahead of schedule, it's the first budget in a decade that doesn't depend on it, actually in a dozen years. So that would be the one kind of, if you look at the arc of time, and that's what I try to present, at every step of the way, we have reformed the prioritization in the budget and reshifted resources, you guys know this, to children dramatically. Every 7 budgets in a row it's gone up. It now represents a over triple increase in things that are like from after school, summer jobs, safe passage routes, mentoring, early childhood, and a restructuring of finances as it relates to what I thought that things that needed to be fundamentally changed. And literally, the things that we sat here and talked about in 2011 when I was running, when I presented my first budget, everything from selling an asset, rating the rainy day fund, to scoop and toss, we've taken out. We've reduced the structural deficit, and simultaneously have increased our investments in what I think are the important things for the city's neighborhood services, like this time road abatement, as well as the garbage can. And then also, most importantly to me, the early childhood investments and other investments for kids and culture. So that would be kind of like, if you see it. Now again, I would say one other thing, and then I really will be quiet. I try to get, I don't know if I've ever quite succeeded at this. The budget is not your economic toolbox. It's a tool in the toolbox. Having the best educated, best trained workforce at every level is your most important tool in your toolbox. Having the most modern transportation system, whether it's aviation or public transportation or being the #1 city for bike lanes. Having a very good, strong public school system is real important. Having a high quality of life, an affordable one. And the fiscal piece was in service. That was a real cloud over our horizon, and not only over our horizon, at where we were standing. And that's been moved to the side. And more importantly, it showed that we had the political will to handle our problems. So that's kind of, I think, the 2 points. Obviously, you know Carol Brown is the Chief Financial Officer. Sam is the budget director, and this is her first budget, so you are all wanting to be nice to her. And Aaron is the controller. Aaron Kane as the controller. It reflects the department that originally was, so 2 separate departments, revenue and controller, that is now combined, that we did in 2012.
Do you all know who we are, by the way? Maybe we should introduce
Sam doesn't.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
We were teasing Sam. This is her first budget meeting.
So why don't we go, Marilyn?
Marilyn Garcia, editorial writer.
Everybody knows Fran. Rich
Hine, photographer.
I'm Tom McNamee, an editorial page editor.
I'm Thomas Frisbee, editorial writer.
Mary Mitchell Collins.
And Chris Fusco, managing editor.
So you want to talk about what the one thing, there was an explicit criticism when I read Fran's story, I think it was Fran's story, United Centered folks were saying that this, you know, and that's actually always an interesting issue for me, is when does the tax tip over so much that it starts to cut into the actual ability to do business, and they think it does.
Okay. Well, first, let me say just in general, in revenue. We have a 40% expansion of the homeowners exemption. And in the prior budget, we eliminated the head tax. But also in this budget, we eliminated the amusement tax for local artists, music venues, and theaters. Eliminated it. At the larger venues, we went from what was 5% to 9%. We've also put resources towards arts programming for kids. But that said, a sporting event is already 9. There's not fewer people going to a sporting event. And second of, so there just is not. And that more importantly than that, there was inconsistency between a Monday night sporting event and a Tuesday entertainment. And I will guarantee you, they will continue to have the performances there. And there's also, as you probably saw, they change the ticket price all the time. And I am, since the first time I ran, I talked about taking a look at what Old Town School of Folk Music did to that Lincoln Street. It converted an entire desolate area to a thriving nightlife. You have that across the city for Metro, for Vic, for other theater, Thalia Hall and Pilsen. Those are all going to zero. That's where the artists of tomorrow are coming from. That's where the small business gift theater in Jefferson Park, they're going to zero. So I'll accept, I disagree with the criticism of Jerry Reinsdorf and also the Blackhawks and the owners of United. I should do it that way. The owners of United, the owners of the Cell, the owners of Wrigley. Look, Soldier Field, which is a city.
You know, I'll admit it, I know Fran knows this, but I actually did not know we eliminated the amusement tax for all the small storefront.
Well, you should
joints.
read. You should know what I've done, not what Fran writes. That's a joke, Fran. Okay, I eliminated. It was a joke. And now I'm going to pay a price for that. We eliminated. I talked about it in the speech. It went to zero.
When did you do that?
This budget.
This budget eliminates the amusement tax for?
On
For
the
small,
1,500 and under.
Hold on a second. Oh, just, Carol, you get right in on me. For 1,500 and less.
And they were paying the 5% before?
Yeah. And then if you're a big entity, I went from 5% to 9%. You already pay 9% for a sporting
Whose
event.
idea was to do that?
Okay, the 5 and 9 or the not all to 9?
To eliminate for the smaller.
Oh, to eliminate? Well, it was a good idea. It was mine. If it was not a great idea, all of us did it together. It's a joke.
What I mean was,
we
were you approached by the smaller theater
Oh, no,
communities?
we
who
were.
said, you know, this would really help? Or
Let me
the
say
smaller
two other
business?
things. This is, and why don't you say your thing, because I have one thing I want to add.
No, you clarified it. I was just-
Okay. The second thing is, I think it's 2 budgets ago, you know, all the skyboxes used to have an exemption on the amusement tax. Eric and Carol could give you kind of how that worked. And they would get a write-off on it as amusement. We changed that because I didn't think the skyboxes should be getting a break. This is consistent with everything I've ever said. And I believe this. I'll make this prediction. They're gonna still book acts. They will still book acts there. And there are some people that run these institutes said how profitable those acts were as opposed to the sporting event. And my guess is they're gonna continue to do it because it's so important for their business. And I don't think any artist is not coming, and I don't think any attendee for that artist is not showing up.
Okay.
For basically what will come to, depending on how you price the ticket, an additional $250. Okay.
There's no fine print exception for Lollapalooza or anything festival-ish or?
No, but I do appreciate the question, but no.
Mayor, another issue is you're
But I
assuming
do
that-
want to say one thing. I'm glad I came here to clarify, since you did not know, but we eliminated it to zero. Go ahead.
I was saying that there's criticism of you assuming financial responsibility for 2 separate agencies, CTA and CPS, and not giving the aldermen, at the very least, their budget approval of those agencies. If they're gonna suck money away from the city, then we ought to have budget approval, some of the aldermen say. Are you willing to give that, and is that
No.
a fair?
No,
thing?
so let's do 2 things. I kind of don't agree with the assumption based in there, but let me go through it. On the since day one, I've been modernizing the CTA. Red Line South was the first thing, and it's still going on at 95th Street. Red Line North, Blue Line. When I was a congressman, the Brown Line. We've been modernizing new stations, and I think, and also new track, and we're the first system to go 4G. Now, I live in a different world. It has been a decade since Springfield passed a transportation bill. I do not think the prospects for Donald Trump's infrastructure bill is anywhere up. In fact, if anything, they're now delaying the time in which they think they're going to get tax reform. As I said in the speech, and I want to repeat because it reflects my view, I am not going to put the future of the city on hold. I can either continue to invest in mass transit system and a modern transportation system, which is why when you look at even, don't just take it from me, but you guys seen the Amazon RFP, you've seen what I've done recruiting companies. Public transportation and modern, efficient transportation system, unlike New York City, unlike DC, is a real lure for Chicago. It's a new revenue source, away from a gas tax. It's an alternative, and it allows the city of Chicago to continue to invest in the quality of life of its neighborhoods and its economic capacity, and it creates jobs. And it is consistent with everything I've done at CTA. But you guys know full well. Let me answer this question. Who here takes rideshare? Because I take the CTA. What do you take, Fran? Metro?
I take Metro
Okay.
and I walk
Do-
and I
do-
occasionally take a cab.
And you-
I try to
so you
take cabs
do-
rather than
okay.
ride sharing.
Okay, but do you ever take rideshare?
Yeah, some fun time.
I take the CTA every day, take rideshare twice a year.
Okay. But have you taken rideshare in here?
I drive.
Okay.
Both ride share and
Okay.
cabs.
Nobody, when I take CTA, ever says to me, what do you do in the rideshare industry? They'll say something about a modernization of the CTA, and I make no bones about it. We're going to invest in that future. Second is, in 2012, I laid out a policy as it relates to TIFs and surpluses. And I've been upfront about that policy since 20. Second, every budget we use a surplus to invest in schools. This year, we're using it to make sure that there are no cuts as it relates to public safety related to our children. And I make no bones about it. I don't think, given certain things that have saved the aldermen, they want all that responsibility. And we're not taking on anything else but ensuring that there are no cuts in public safety for kids and a modern transportation system that serves the whole city and serves it well.
What do you say to Fran's point, though, that while that may be a good argument for doing what you're doing, it does sort of, the city council hasn't got a lot to say about this. They don't control those budgets.
Go ahead.
So in 2006, the city council passed a 1.5% real estate transfer tax for CTA.
Right.
So the notion that the city council hasn't done things to help, whether it's CTA or CPS in the past, it's just not a real notion. I mean, so there have come times in the past where city council has taken action and had no comment on the CTA budget in 2006 either, but passed the real estate transfer tax and continues to appropriate for that every year.
But are you willing to entertain city council approval of those two budgets,
No,
CPS and CTA?
I think, look, we have a good tradition here, and we are going to stay with that tradition.
Can you talk about the school finances? Because every time every time I have a conversation with them, they talk about the city's finances are in better shape and whatnot. There's again that the schools are a mess financially. Lawrence Missal will say that every time you bring it up. He'll say, this is fine, but the ticking bomb is CPS.
Okay, look, well, first of all, it's not true. Because when I walked in the office, that's not how Lawrence Missal used to talk about the corporate account. And he'll be the first to tell you there's been major changes. So, and I talked to him as recently as yesterday, so I disagree with that.
Okay.
And I think if you call him, and I'm more than willing to stand by the phone while you make that call, he would tell you that we have done significant work.
Oh, I don't think he would disagree. What I'm
Okay,
saying
so
is
wait,
that
so-
the real problem remains CPS.
I'm not,
I've just to get it clear.
Tom, I have never backed away from any fixing of any of the inherited problems. But let me be really clear about something. When I walked into office, there are two books at CPS, an academic book and a financial book. We had the shortest school day and the shortest school year. We did not have universal kindergarten, and our graduation rate was in the mid-50s. The first thing I had to do was to the parents and the students whose futures depend is get the education thing right. Simultaneously, we started to fix the budget and did a tremendous job fiscally up until the point where you really buffered where the state was shortchanging the city and the kids. But my first responsibility as I pledged in the campaign, and I pledged in this room, and I pledged ever, we are going to make sure the academics are right now in every measure. Reading, math scores, graduation rate, college attendance, they are all now pointing in the right direction, and in many cases leading the United States of America. That's the responsibility I first and foremost had. And if I worked on the fiscal thing and ignored that, you'd be in here asking me a different question. Number two, only 2 months ago did the state finally reverse decades of treating Chicago taxpayers and Chicago's teachers and Chicago students as second-class citizens. Have I changed everything in the last 3 months or last 2 months since that happened? No, but you guys have written about the fact that you needed to get fair funding in CPS. That got done. So that actually helps CPS's finances. You have written about the fact that it was the worst funding education formula in the United States of America. That got finally changed. Now, does CPS have more work to do? Yes. What the state did built on the progress CPS did. And I'm not done making improvements there, but I will never let it come at the expense of the academic book.
You know what's interesting about your response is it sounds defensive to me, because I don't think anybody here suggested the schools haven't made great progress academically, and we've been the first.
No, but I think
and we've been the first to say
Tom,
that. The question was not what have you done, not done. The question is what needs to be done now.
Because I'm also going to reject the premise. I'm going to direct the premise that there's one book to measure, and I'm going to widen the screen to 2 books. And I'm going to tell you what my responsibility as mayor is. My responsibility was to get a full school day, not the shortest one. To get universal kindergarten for every child, not ones that parents lobbied on behalf of their kids. That was my first, and then to make sure there was principles were backed up. Simultaneously, we have made real changes to that budget from where it was before. And I'm only 3 months after I finally got, and nobody could have done it without getting the state to finally do their job. The #1 funder of education is the state of Illinois. And they were always behind, which is why your paper advocated for that vote. That was the most important thing I could do. But what I'm saying to you is, yeah, we have work ahead of us. And we've done work before, we're going to do work more.
So my question is, what is that work? What are the challenges we still have? What deficits, what unpaid bills are coming down the road, what underfunded pension realities we have? What's the reality still for CPS?
So the reality for CPS is that the funding bill gave them $450 million of additional revenue that they didn't have in last year's budget. You could see immediately their trading value or the cost of their debt diminish. They're getting ready to do a refinancing where they're going to take 9% debt down dramatically so that it's more market. They are very close to having a structurally balanced budget for the first time in years because of the additional funding. They will continue to look at expenses, and I think over time you will see CPS will have a structurally balanced budget. They had a line of credit that they needed last year to operate schools all throughout the year. They have renewed that line, but they have changed dramatically their forecast of what they're going to need to draw down from that line. So that is significant. And that shows that they're not in a cash flow crisis the same way that they were last year. They are pulling the cost out of their budget. They're going to have to continue to do that. But as the mayor said, they're not going to have to do it at the expense of the classroom, which is what we were trying to avoid.
Tom, let me say, I was not defensive. I actually disagree fundamentally with the premise. Like somehow it was the fiscal piece when it wasn't actually, go back to when we walked into the office, you were writing stories about what was going on, or actually what wasn't happening educationally. And I had a responsibility to do both, and I put my emphasis, while we did the fiscal pieces and did reforms, fundamental reforms, was to get the academics set right and get the structure of it set right and put the principals in control of school buildings. That's all been put in place. And let them then do that. I then spent the last 2 years of making sure that the governor didn't try to do what he did, which he wanted the CPS system to go into Chapter 11. He tried to rattle the markets. You know it. Conscious effort. Now that takes a lot to stop the governor from trying to undermine the largest school system in the state. And that's exactly what he was trying to do. And then make him come to terms with the fact that the state owed our teachers pensions, just like they received from our taxpayers for their pensions in the suburbs. Make sure that they treated poor kids fairly in the state. And so when it comes to fixing the finances, well, the single biggest thing was get the state of Illinois to step up to their responsibilities rather than shirk them. And that's what they've been doing for decades. And every mayor who ever sat in the chair that I have the honor to sit in advocated for what we just got accomplished. Now, in the last 4 months, Ms. Carroll just noted, we have, since that passed, which is about 2 months, we have more work ahead of us, and we'll work through it. We always have, never shrunk from our responsibilities to fix things and ask somebody else to do it. But we finally got the state to stop trying to undermine CPS and start actually doing what they were supposed to do all along for 40 years.
But so, I guess what I'm trying to understand is that how much, we recognize that there was a big hole, we recognize there were all these deficiencies. How much is left to do? I mean, what is left now to do?
I don't, you want to go through it, I don't have like their budget right in front of me. I don't, that's really.
I'm sorry, I don't mean for you to go through everything, I mean, just give us a sense.
Like, so I think from a broad standpoint, what they're gonna do right now is that they had some really expensive debt because of some of the comments that the governor had made and because of kind of where they're rated. Immediately, they're gonna refinance some of that debt to lower their debt service costs. That's gonna alleviate some of their operating budget pressures. They're going in and they do this, the mayor makes us do this, they do the same thing, reform before revenue. So they're going through and continuing to look at their expense structure and see if there are places where they can operate more efficiently. You'll see that happen in their next budget. And as they invest, was it 2 years ago, the mayor had the city council passed the improvement levy, a capital improvement levy. And as they continue to invest in their physical plant, they are operating more efficiently because, you know, they're putting new roofs, air conditioning, things like that, and so the operating costs of their physical plant is going down. So they're doing the things that they need to do to make sure that they're operating more efficiently. They're looking at their expense structure. And then they're lowering costs where they can lower costs. And one of those big costs, as you guys, as the press has reported, has been their finance costs because of the uncertainty in Springfield. But
What about closings? They've got to close
Can
some
I
high
answer one
schools,
other
don't they?
question? Is Mayor, look, one of the big changes also in the last contract were healthcare savings. The second is, unlike what started in 1983, all new hires pay the full 9%, not the 2%, as it relates to their pension. And so there's other things that will be coming each year. The healthcare cost savings are actually greater than what we projected. And teachers are actually contributing the full, new teachers, the full percentage, also things that you've been advocating in this paper for years, finally got negotiated after 1983 when it went down to 2%. So those actually have incremental but nonetheless significant improvement. Plus, just like I said, we were going to do a three-way handshake. The state finally is paying their portion of the pension. So those are things that you're going to see. And then let me also add, every year prior to this year, state aid to education went down. There's a new floor for CPS, and it actually is going to go up. So those are significant pieces that change the dynamics. I don't have a line by line for you, but know from a structured cost basis, from a healthcare basis, from a retirement basis, and from a state aid, those are fundamentally game changers, each and every one of them.
But don't you need to?
You know, we have a moratorium to 218. We followed a model both in Austin High School and in the Englewood model that I think work right, but we're not approaching and looking at that right now.
Can you talk about why you treaded so softly on ride sharing as long as you've identified a new funding source? 15 or 20 cents a ride is like nothing, isn't it? I mean, some of the aldermen wanted to go to $1. They wanted to add to the $5 pickup and drop-off fee at here in Midway.
Well,
why not do more?
We negotiated. We think we have the right balance to fund the modernization of our transportation and CTA system, and it's built on the other fee that we added in the last budget.
But these companies are making money hand over fist, aren't they?
I don't know, I haven't looked at them.
But if you look at, they're doing fantastic. Their revenues are surging. Why not ask them to do more?
Look, we have agreed and negotiated what I think is the right balance, given it's built on the fee increase that was done last year and last cycle.
And not even to help the cab industry also.
I'm modernizing the CTA, the roads, and the bike system. And I'm doing it because there's not a capital bill by either Springfield or Washington DC.
You don't think you need to level the playing field with CAS in any way?
There are some other things that will be considered, contemplated in this budget, which will be reforms for the taxi cab industry. We're still working it out with them, but it'll be things like, for example, extending the life of the vehicle and other things that they feel are important and helpful to maintain their livelihoods. The challenge is that when we're dealing with the taxi cab industry, we are also dealing with the medallion owners, we're dealing with various groups, so we want to make sure that we hit the right point and that we don't do something to benefit maybe the medallion owners and it'll have a detrimental impact on the drivers.
Anything other than the age of the vehicle for them?
There are a few other things, but they haven't really been defined really well, and some of the things we've had to throw out because not everybody was on the same page.
So look, we negotiated what we think is the right balance based on what we've done, including the McCormick piece. This is the right balance, and it allows us to get the resources that are necessary for the capital improvements of the CTA and the bike system and the road system.
But you described a $40 million hole, right? That ride share was a $40 million impact. Am I correct on that?
Right.
Frame that was
On other revenues that,
On other
that they've
revenues.
cost you, is what your administration said. And you're only raising 30 million, so why not at least up it?
We did, I think, the right balance, but go ahead.
Well, that's my question. I mean, you seem to be $10 million off here in the math by your own calculations. I mean, you would think when you said 40 million, you meant you want to raise 40 million, right?
But I think that the right way, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say that 40 million wasn't necessarily for the city's corporate fund. It had an impact. We were measuring the impact on both CTA, MPEA, as well as the city's infrastructure. And there are other revenue sources or revenue options that are being contemplated that will make whole MPEA, and that's part of the negotiations. So we have not yet finished the discussions around it, but we hope to have something within the next week or so.
What might that be, the
She said,
MPEA
look, what we're going to do, we'll finish the negotiations so that you know, rather than negotiate here, okay? That would not be a real smart move to do, but thanks.
You know, in the budget, you mentioned, actually in the summary that I read, you talk about cost cutting, and I don't think that's a huge part of the budget resolution this time, but I am curious to know, what did you cut? Was it small things, or was there some major cut?
I have a slightly different take, but I'll let them go through. There's like 12 recommendations from the IG we incorporated. I look, Tom, when I came to be mayor, what was the third biggest item? Healthcare costs. What was rising at 10% a year? Healthcare costs. What revenue was rising at 10% a year?
Nothing.
Nothing. Now, when you end up where your healthcare costs are flat over 7 years, which I would love to look at the Sun-Times Corporation healthcare costs and see if they were flat with 2012 numbers. So when you say to me, where's the reform? If I can stand here, which I can, and tell you roughly, well, healthcare inflation went up somewhere between 25 to 34%, depending on who you want to listen to, and your healthcare costs are roughly flat, we can give you the IG items that we've taken and incorporated in the budget as part of reforms. But the biggest reform we've done is we've reformed neighborhood services to a much more efficient model, and they make a structural change of $25 million a year. We've reformed the way we do energy and our buildings, our leasing. But the biggest, most significant reform we have done is we have dealt with healthcare costs in a fundamental way where they're flat over 6 years. Flat, so I want to say roughly flat, which is not true for the Sun-Times Corporation.
You're guessing.
I'll put money on it. You want to take the bet? Do you want to take the bet?
Aren't you?
No, hold on a second. Hold on. I'm ready to take this bet. You want to take the bet over the
I'm
Sun?
not placing a bet.
Okay.
Aren't you closing
You
in
just
on
did,
another?
then.
Aren't you closing in on another deal with the unions to even
Well,
build on that?
I'm saying, I have with confidence, they have been, as I said in my speech, they're our partners. We've worked through some difficult issues. I promised when I left President Obama's side, I will never deal with this issue again. This is what I'm dealing with. The fact is, in the most significant reform you have, and just, what was it, about a month ago, the rating agencies told municipalities, states, we're going to start looking at your retiree health care and weighing it on you the way we do pensions. And Chicago's in a healthier position because of what we've done. So, Sam and Aaron, I want to give Aaron a chance to speak, can walk you through everything else we've done,
I'm just
incorporating.
curious, for this year, what did,
So for this year, part of it is we've had some savings, we've seen some savings in personnel and non-personnel items. So for example, we are going to repurpose some civilian positions when the mayor is investing in CPD for some of the consent decree or reform staffing. And so we've had a lot of vacant civilian positions, and we're repurposing that, and that's to the tune of roughly $3 million or so. We have some energy savings. We've done some consolidation in graphics. The good news is that since the mayor has taken office, there have been some really heavy reforms that have yielded a lot of savings. The mayor's done department consolidations and vacancy eliminations, and so now that we're getting into the 6th or 7th year,
Right,
they
it's
seem
not
a
the
little
same.
smaller, but we're looking for different types of efficiencies. So you won't see the large gains that you've seen, or the large savings in the past, but you'll see a lot across the board.
I do think the biggest item, and it's significant, I mean, it's like $40 million a year, it's healthcare. But we'll get you also all the, I think there's 10, 12,
Absolutely, 12 things that we're.
took from the IG and incorporated into the budget.
Can you explain why you didn't consult with Lisa Madigan before agreeing on arriving at the 27.4 million figure for police reform?
Here's the team, first of all, the budget went for like, what was it, 3 to 4 million, it's 27.5 million. So single largest increase in the budget is being true to the principles that we negotiated with the Obama administration. Single largest increase, not counting COPA. In addition, we have Mr. Bromowich, which is the leading expert on police reform, who is our consultant. We worked with him. And it's everything the document said we should do, from community policing, training, use of force, de-escalation, to fund the basics and fundamentals of the training that's consistent with the document that we had negotiated with the Obama administration. Mr. Bromowich, not counting other people, was kind of the key person we sought advice to.
But in fact, Lisa, you're negotiating a consent decree with her. You're going to have timetables. You're going to have financial commitments. Why wouldn't she be at the table when you decide?
We're working through, this is not the only thing we're doing, right? It's this year's budget, and we're working through, and we have a person by the expertise who's done 6 or 7 police decrees, Mr. Bromwich. So we worked with him and other people. And it's the largest increase in the budget, and it's not even counting what we've done for COPA.
Are you closing in on a consent decree? Have you made any progress with that?
That's a separate discussion we'll have at the appropriate
Are
time.
you making progress? Have you met a lot of
course.
times? What's happening?
The team is working on it, and they're working through a lot of the issues, and it's all consistent with what we've done with the Obama administration.
Is there a chance that you would have agreed to a consent decree with federal oversight for the police department at this point?
With the federal oversight?
Yeah, I mean.
I think you, if you were, I know you must have been riveted by my speech, but if you were watching Mr. Sessions' testimony today, I think the answer to that is in his testimony.
Is what?
Is in his testimony.
Well,
No,
the
I just-
federal court oversight, though, you
No.
agreed to that.
He said the Justice Department.
Okay, so they won't be a party, but a federal judge will, and
But he said the Justice, I'm answering the question, okay? The question is, working with the Justice Department. They basically made their attitude clear.
What did you think of the specter of 2 cops on the same day taking the 5th?
I'm not gonna comment on something that's an active trial. It would be a mistake to do it.
Well, but doesn't that undermine everything you're trying to do, that spectacle
It's a
of that?
fair question. No, it doesn't undermine what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is we're being consistent. And over the last 4 or 5 months, in fact, Fran, you've written articles, is there gonna be money to back up the reforms? The largest increase in the budget is funding police reform. Question answered.
So let me
What
ask
about
you,
at-risk youth? That's been a priority.
Let me ask you about
That
the-
was a priority in the
Mary?
budget.
I'm gonna come over there and kiss you. I love you.
No, don't.
Yeah.
What did Mary
It's
do?
only taken me an hour here. Okay. Thank you for that. I am, and I said it today once, but I want to emphasize it. In all the efforts of putting a budget together, if you can fiscally reform, get rid of scoop and toss, which at one time had written as high as $460 million, get rid of the rainy day fund, get rid of selling assets, get all 4 pensions fixed, and every year straight, 7 years consistent, increase after school, summer jobs, mentoring, and safe passage routes, and every year increase early childhood. There is when you look at the arc of what's happened, the most significant increase over those 7 years is children. And when it comes to at-risk, or however, I actually believe all kids, if not paid attention to, could be at risk, but I understand the thrust of the question, Mary. We have grown our after-school activities up to north of 110,000 kids when you put Park District, ASM, and all that together. The summer jobs now with no federal or state aid is up to 31,014. We've increased and gone not just from universal, when we used to have half-day kindergarten, to full-day kindergarten. We've increased our pre-K every year, and these new 5 early childhood centers will even make another significant impact there. And the biggest thing I could say for at-risk is both the after-school, the summer jobs, and I would personally believe the safe passage routes, so which is not an accident. Our attendance is up on the routes that you have safe passage routes. And the best thing you could do for an at-risk child is get them to school. Mentoring program, which I think I spoke to about why I think that's so important.
So you put more money into it, I mean, what?
$1 million for after school, $1 million for summer jobs, $1 million for, $1 million, we're ahead on BAM, right? And then $1 million for safe passage routes to the highest number.
That's additional.
Additional, new, and that's on top of the $1 million last year, the year before, so it's cumulative each year, increasing.
So in total, from 2017 to the 2018 budget, we've included an additional $11 million investment in youth programming.
Can I ask you a question that have anything to do with the budget?
No, but go ahead.
Are you having concerns about the ramped up effort on the part of people who are opposing or have problems with the Obama Library? Are you concerned that this could turn out to be another kind of George Lucas situation?
No, I think, look, for a whole host of reasons, I would say no. Because there is overwhelming support both in the city and in the surrounding communities. I think there's a right way to do it, which is what we, the foundation, the school, the university are going about. And the benefits are a multitude of ways, both economic, culturally, and otherwise, in the improvement. But we're going to continue to work with community groups and the community as we have in the past, and not just us, the university as well as the foundation.
What about the golf course merger?
Look, the first,
Are you still for that?
there's a benefit there that people have asked for, but my first priority is getting everything done to make sure that the presidential library can be built.
If that goes by the boards, then so be it, or what do you think?
I'm not going for your headline today, so just know that my #1 priority is getting the presidential
I
library.
understand, but where do you stand on that merger and what it does to displace the sanctuary and the nature sanctuary?
A lot of people in the neighborhood have been asking for improvements to that golf course. We're going to work our way through it, but I'm going to tell you where my prioritization. Rule 1 is get all the work done for the presidential library before I take anything else on.
But it seems like it's already been taken on, the golf course merger, like it's just a matter of time before it happens.
No, that's not, I'm giving you exactly the priority and where the sequencing is. First, presidential library. First, presidential library. First, presidential library.
Can you talk a little bit about Amazon's second world headquarters and the bid? I know you pushed the button on the bid and you were first and everything else, but what's in the bid? What incentives are in the bid? What sites did you put forward? How many and where?
Look, guys, I know you know this, but as somebody that at least spends a lot of time competing for businesses to move here, it would be a mistake while other cities are putting their bids together for me to sit here and draw an hour out, because I'm not going to let anybody else change their bid based on ours. I'm not going to do it.
Shouldn't that be available under FOIA though?
You go ahead if that's what you want to do. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to. The window hasn't closed, and other cities are looking at what other cities are doing. So you go do what you want to do. I know what I'm going to do. Number 2, while the window's open. Number 2, let me be really clear. And I said this yesterday. I really want to emphasize this. You have every right to talk about incentives, but you are missing what the incentives are. You have the best educated workforce of the 5 biggest cities in the United States, and you're growing at 2.5 times the United States of America. We grew 10% in the same window. The rest of the country grew at 4.3. If you have 8,000 openings in Seattle and you can't fill, your #1 thing is, do you have a workforce that on day 1 can start? So you're looking at one incentive and you're missing the #1 incentive. Number 2, best educated workforce. 2, do you have a university system that can back it up every year after that? Most important incentive. Number 3, do you draw talent from the surrounding area? That is the core crux. Number 4, do you have the best connected aviation system?
Well, coming back to number 3, what do you mean, do you draw talent from the area? What's
Chicago has 855,000 graduates from the Big 10 states and universities. We are the #1 draw. in the Midwest, and if you drew a circle 200 miles around Chicago, not only do we have more universities in the city of Chicago than any other city but Boston, we draw more talent from Tier 1 universities than any other city in the United States, and probably the globe. That's an incredible strength. So when you say, what's the incentive? It's right in front of you.
But
It's
this is a company that is so known
No,
to hold
Fran,
people up for
Fran.
incentives, for financial incentives.
I understand that, but you're missing, I'm going to challenge you. You're missing the most important strength in the city you report on.
You know, can I
No,
just
I'm
say
not
one
missing
point?
it.
I think you're missing the
No,
point.
no,
Mary. I don't think
Tom,
anyone's
I'm
missing your
I'm-
point.
no,
I think your point is,
you're.
I just wrote an editorial saying what you said.
I know, but I know because we talk about it a lot. You're narrowly
Yeah.
defining incentive. I'm asking you to expand your definition of incentive. Number two.
With all respect, what I'm saying is, I think we already know those parts. It's in the editorial on Sunday, Monday. I think the point is, we're trying to find out what we don't know. We know Chicago has a workforce.
No, but I'm saying to you, as somebody who's been on the phone a lot with companies, that when they look, let me back up. No company usually tries to do a second headquarters. Why do they do that? Because there's something that's not right in the first one. And if you have all these incentives financially, but you're missing a workforce, no financial incentive is going to cover up the number one incentive. No financial incentive. If your airport flies to 2 other markets, not 78 internationally, 200 plus domestically, no incentive, quote unquote, financial package will make up for that. So the biggest incentives are the strengths of the city. There's a financial package that will make the city competitive with others. I don't know every other one that has been in. While the window is open, it would be a mistake for us
Can I ask you
to
a
make
related
ourselves
question?
less competitive.
You can't talk about the bid, totally understand that. We knew that even asking the question. But you and the governor probably had to work a lot closer together on this than you have for a while. Can you talk about how much you two worked together on this?
Our teams work together. I've always said from day one with him, I'm going to have a different approach. It's going to be what's in the interest of Chicago. Forget whether we had a prior relationship or whatever. We had disagreements how you were treating Chicago public schools, different agreements about how you were treating the economic engine of the state, the city of Chicago. On this, we both realized that this is a once in a lifetime, and our teams will work together. They've been intimately involved in the proposal, intimately involved in the presentation of that material, and intimately involved in developing a package mainly driven by the state of quote-unquote financial incentives to come here.
Has he
So-
put the state of Illinois Center on the table as a possibility?
I think you should look, there are a number of sites on the proposal.
Is that one of them?
I gotta be honest, I've been looking at all the proposals, but I don't, here's what I've said, is if you want to go horizontal, we have multiple places. If you wanna go vertical, we have multiple places. So depending on what they're looking to do, and what they're also looking to do is speed.
Yeah.
What they can do.
So which
I don't-
of
They
the
don't like
sites
to
is it would be speediest? Probably the post office, right?
I think this is fair questions to preliminary to ask. Some, yes, there's could be a kind of a campus-like feeling. There's some that exist that they can convert pretty quickly. There's others that they can build pretty quickly, and any developer will do whatever they can to make it available to them.
The old post office always seemed crazy until now, because when you read about the history of Amazon and how they expanded in
Yeah.
Seattle, very often they did
The only
exactly that. They took old buildings and repurposed them, and given the size of the workforce we're looking for.
I would say one other thing, Tom, though. If the merchandise mart hadn't gone from what it was to what it is today, nobody would look at the post office structure like that. But because of what happened in the merchandise mart, you have something that successfully reconverted, reimagined itself, and is now a booming tech center.
So as you, speaking of tech centers, as you were giving your,
And let me say one other thing, if you look at the post office, it's not too far from Union Station, where you have both Amtrak, Metro, Blue Line, and Rapid Bus.
Right, so isn't that the most attractive?
That's for them to decide, but the good news is, we're not down to a site. We have multiple sites for them to pick up.